Good Thursday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com mailbag podcast presented by our good friends at Blue Water Climate Control. Check them out at bluewaterclimatecontrol.com for any of your air conditioning and heating needs. No heat right now, all air conditioned. Everybody needs that house to get cool. If you're having any issues with that, you need to contact our friends at Blue Water Climate Control. Want to know more about them? Give them a buzz at 865-299-2290 or check them out at their website, bluewaterclimatecontrol.com. Visit them on Twitter at Blue H2O_climate. Bottom line, other companies try to fix things. Blue Water Climate Control is going to fix it the right way the first time. They're not going to oversell you on something you don't need. They're not going to undersell you on something. They're going to get it right the first time for you so that you have the cool comfort you need in your home during these hot summer months that we've been dealing with and the hot temperatures that we're all enjoying at this point in time. All right, it's Thursday, mailbag time, and we'll jump right into the questions with Austin Price and Rob Lewis. So, guys, let's get going here. Who would be the first choice to switch from wide receiver to cornerback on this team?
It would have been Kenny Solomon, but I just don't know if there is one. Brent.
I'm the same way. I'm sitting here thinking about it. I don't know that there's a guy that you would. I could see. I mean, we know Alontae Taylor played receiver. He's not going to move now. But in terms of going the other direction, I don't know of anybody on this roster that would be moving from wide receiver to corner. I think that's why Tennessee's been so active in the transfer portal, trying to increase their depth at the cornerback position because there is no other options on the roster.
Well, correct. And I mean, when Prunty and Turnage came on the market, they reached out to both. And once Prunty picks South Carolina, Tennessee's continued to swing away at Brandon Turnage, and we'll see if they can get that one done, or if he wants to come here again. He's wanted a guaranteed starting spot. At some point, though, Brent, you got to come off those demands a little bit, otherwise you're going to end up playing nowhere. So we'll see if he kind of changes his viewpoint. The one guy I could potentially think, but he had too good of a spring, is Jimmy Callaway. I think Jimmy Callaway could potentially play corner, but I just think he had too good of a spring that they're not gonna move him. I just don't see them moving anybody.
Yep, I agree with you 100%.
Because you got to think, like a guy like Danico Slaughter played nickel last year and played some safety. This staff's using him more as a corner. So, I think a lot of people forget a body like Danico Slaughter could play some corner.
Yeah, I mean, again, I just don't think, to answer his question, I don't see anybody going from the offensive side at the receiver spot to defensive back or the corner in particular. All right, to Bassmaster Ball wants to know, has Tennessee prepared their football players and their athletes for the name, image, likeness as Tennessee prepared as other SEC schools? Rob, I mean, we've talked a lot about name, image, likeness. There's some more questions in the podcast about this. I think all schools have educated. We've seen on social media today, on Thursday, or on Wednesday, excuse me, that Tennessee's had continuing education. They'll have more of that. They had a big meeting on Wednesday morning to try to prepare kids. I mean, I think everybody's sort of as prepared as they can be, but it's basically trying to prepare for just a huge unknown, because nobody knows exactly how all this thing's going to work out. I think there's a lot of numbers floating around out there that probably aren't realistic on what guys could have made previously and how all of this works. I don't know. I just think guys have been educated to be cautious about what kind of deal they jump into.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it best. Nobody knows. Tennessee's not ignored it. I know from talking to people there that they have people talking to the student athletes, and there have been, they've tried to educate them, but educate them about something that's just never been seen before. I mean, how much can you educate somebody on something that the people doing the education haven't experienced themselves? I mean, it's just, it's been talked about. Tennessee's not ignored it, but at the same time, it's a brand new world.
Well, Brent, it's something that you and I have met with people about, and to a man, everybody kind of agrees that this thing's going to continually change by the day. Like things that, maybe some people haven't thought of, others have, and you'll see, different layers once the thing gets peeled back a little bit. So, I think, Tennessee and all schools are trying to, give as much education about some of this stuff to their players as they can about, if you sign a contract on something, you gotta, you're a big boy, you gotta fulfill it. You can't get emotional and decide, well, I'm not doing it this week because we lost. Like, you want to be paid like a professional, then you've got to, handle yourself like a professional. Little stuff like that I think, these kids haven't thought about. They've just thought about dollar signs.
Well, and I think the other reality too that's out there, and this is not to say there's not money available out there. I'm not going to imply that in any way, shape, or form, because I think they are. In terms of the national type stuff, I don't know how much of that's going to be out there. It's going to be more local. I think early on, it's going to be more local stuff, which is, for some players is going to be disappointing because the money's not going to be as high as people think that it's going to be. So then as a student athlete, Rob, you have to determine what's your time worth, what's important and what's not important to you. I mean, is it, getting paid, $500 or $300 or $1,000 to do an autograph session, okay, versus getting paid certain amount of money per month, but you have to do something weekly to earn that money. Those are all things that I think student athletes have to take into account before they go diving down into any of these roads.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I don't, on a national scale, I think that's going to be very rare. And I've said this before, so I repeat myself. The only guys I can think of in the last 4 or 5 years who might have, had enough of a high enough of a Q rating to, represent a national brand would be somebody like Trevor Lawrence, Zion Williamson certainly could have done it. I don't mean, maybe Justin Fields, maybe Tua, but I mean Trevor Lawrence and Zion are the two. Is there anybody out there in college football like that right now?
No,
I mean, or college athletics, period. It's going to be rare in basketball because those guys are here and gone. But man, I think you can in football. I think you'll see it every once in a while.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing is, are you committing to something with a guy for 1 year or for 6 months? I mean, I think those are all kinds of things. And again, I think that's why so much of the meetings with players like what Tennessee had on Wednesday was an education thing. There'll be some other meetings that'll be set up to where they can get to know some people and introduce themselves to some people. But, it's pretty clear what the student athlete's thinking right now. When you look at everything that's on social media, Austin, hey, my DMs are open, hit me up for, whatever you want. I mean, these guys are politicking, soliciting hard for it. How much of a response are they going to get is unknown at this point. And I think it's going to be unknown for a while because a lot of companies are trying to decide, do I want to jump in from day one or do I want to wait and see how this thing shakes out for a while before I jump into the middle of it?
Well, I think it's going to be a lot like the transfer portal. I think a lot of these kids they get in the transfer portal thinking that there's these greener pastures and everything's going to be, peachy and all that. And then a lot of these kids are finding out they don't have homes now. All these kids stuck in the portal. I think you're going to, unless you have a brand, a personality, a following, I think you're going to be in for a rude awakening that, hey, you're just not going to get, the interest that you think you are, and so you've seen like literally everybody from your top player to your walk-on Brant posting about the DMs are open. So we've now moved from respect my decision, no interviews to please hit me up, please hit me up, please hit me up. And, literally, the turn of the strike of midnight.
Yep. And how many people get hit up remains to be seen. All right, let's move on here to the next one. Are there any talks of Vanderbilt's baseball scholarship advantage being changed? I can't think of another sport where one team and only one to my knowledge has such a massive advantage. No, everybody's known about the Vanderbilt situation for a while. There's been no change. There's been no adjustment there. That's something within their university that they do that's not in a violation with the SEC or the NCAA. They've got a loophole and a window to make that work, and they use it to their advantage. And I don't think that the NCAA can call in Vanderbilt and tell them they have to do their academic side of things differently. So that's why that's never been changed. I don't see it changing. Any preseason restrictions for the basketball team this year? Seems like teams that relied on game-changing freshmen really felt a blow regarding lack of freshman development, bonding, etc. Rob, there's not anything restriction wise going on with this team with Tennessee right now, right? Everything's wide open for them.
Yeah, it's wide open.
I mean, Rick can get back to having meals and everything that he likes to do, right?
They practice and then or have workouts, and then guys will spend hours hanging out in the players' lounge outside the locker room, which is just a plush situation with multiple big. I mean, maybe 10 big screen TVs, bunch of Xboxes, and some stand-up video games. Yeah, I mean, no restrictions. It's back to normal.
It's like going to Austin's basement or Dave and Buster's, one or the other, right? When you hang out with the Tennessee basketball team. Onward we go. Other than the defensive tackle from Kansas, who are the few guys that have really had a good summer? Also, if I may add, how are the new linebackers looking? Thanks. Keep up the great work, guys. All right, AP, let's talk about some defensive guys or just some guys in general who you like. I mean, Rob mentioned, we mentioned this a couple of times, RJ Perry physically looks vastly different. That doesn't mean he can play, but you talk about a guy who's physically changed his body and where he's at. That guy is as different as anybody from a year ago. Everybody talks about Joe Milton's size. We've talked about that a lot. Anybody else striking the AP?
Defensively, I've seen Caleb Tremblay. I mean, he looks solid, but that isn't like. I mean, Terry looks way better. A guy like Warren Burrell has put on, I think, more muscle. I kind of like him going into the fall, Brent. He kind of flying under the radar a little bit. Tamarion McDonald looks like he's in much better shape than a year ago. Remember, he got injured early on last year and then miraculously found his way into playing time when he had missed so much time there early on after having some off-season surgery late in the game. So, I think he could really kind of bust onto the scene with a really good fall camp and become a real factor at safety. On the offensive side of the ball, you just see Holiday and Callaway are just bigger. Jalen Hyatt looks about the same. I mean, he doesn't. I mean, I think that's just going to be who he is. I mean, that's his body type. He's going to be a skinny guy that can just run. Jabari Small looks about the same. Doesn't look like he's put on much weight. Tyon Evans looks really, really thick. I kind of look forward to seeing a guy like. Yeah, I kind of look forward to seeing Cayman Marley. What's Cayman Marley look like when we get to August? I don't expect him to play this fall, obviously, but he's got the frame that, no matter where he plays, offense, defense, whatever, he has a Power 5 top body.
Yeah, I'm as intrigued to see Evans as I am anybody. How does he fit in?
Because you didn't really see him in the spring.
No, he didn't see him, and so I'm very intrigued to see what Evans looks like. All right, Rob, we're gonna bow out of this question that Hall of Fame has. We're throwing this to Austin. Austin, we're gonna answer this one and move on quickly. Favorite Disney movie? Go.
Man, I don't know.
Come on, Siskel and Ebert.
AP's head's about to explode.
I mean, talk to me. Give me one or two, and then we're moving on.
Well, for me, it would be The Lion King.
That's your one. That's your jam. Okay.
If it's good enough for if it's good enough for JG,
it's good enough for anybody. You. There you go. All right. Can you get an update on basketball? How basketball players are doing? Specifically, can Powell shoot? Rob Lewis.
Yes, Justin Powell can shoot. I would say. I would say arguably he's probably the best shooter on the team. Although if it's a day when Victor Bailey is on, he can get hotter than anybody. But he's streaky. And then I would put Santiago in that group as well. But, yeah, Powell can shoot. My biggest surprise among the freshmen, I expected Kennedy Chandler to be fantastic, and I think he will be. Huntley Hatfield is a lot bigger than I thought he was. I don't mean taller. I mean stronger, thicker in his upper body. He is a really powerful kid that is not going to get pushed around. Adu, on the other hand, I mean, he moves great, runs the floor great for a 7-footer, but he looks a lot like a young, skinny Kyle Alexander. I mean, he's way better than Kyle, skill-wise, but physically, he looks a lot like Kyle. He could definitely stand to eat a lot of peanut butter.
A lot of protein, a lot of late-night protein. Back to football. Are you seeing any confident swagger from players around the complex, like we might surprise a few teams or even ourselves? I mean, I think every kid who plays the game is confident in the offseason. I mean, I think every guy believes that they're going to be better than what any outside pundit thinks. That's why you hear everybody say they've worked harder than they've ever worked before. Nobody's outworking them. I do think this team has some confidence, but Austin, for that confidence to develop, they got to have some good things happen to them early in the season for that confidence to get real. And so, yeah, I mean, I think this team believes in themselves. I think they probably believe they're going to be better than everybody else thinks they're going to be. But I don't think it matters unless they get some tangible things going on the field to give them a shot at some real confidence heading into the meat of the season. That's my stance. That's my belief.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Pittsburgh game's huge and quarterback play early. I mean, you think about it. If they go out there, they beat Pittsburgh, and they're sitting there at 3-0, heading to Florida. I'm not suggesting they beat Florida. Okay, let me stop everybody right there. But what I'm saying though is if you've had good quarterback play and you're 3-0, how does that kind of give you a shot of confidence going into SEC play? Like, I think that drastically changes a lot of things for Tennessee, because even if you don't beat Florida, you go to Missouri and you win that one, then all of a sudden you're like, okay, we can work with the rest of the schedule and potentially, we get ourselves bowl eligible, even though we all know they're probably not going to go to a bowl. If you go and win, 6, 7, 8 games, whatever, in year one with a depleted roster and, with all the investigation stuff hanging over your head, man, that's a real sales pitch for Josh Heupel and company. So, like, you're right. Those first few games, especially that Pittsburgh game with the quarterback play, massive.
All right. They say recruiting is all about relationships. Following recruiting, doing your job well is all about what? Blank.
Relationships.
I think we'd all acknowledge relationships. If you don't have relationships with kids and people who are involved in the decision-making process, you don't cover recruiting very well. You just don't have an idea of kind of where things are. And I mean, it's all about relationships and communicating with guys. On to I Heart Vols. Are we still a blue blood in football? Who is our competition in basketball? Rank these programs as to which have the easier path to being back. All right, here we go. The easier path to being back: Tennessee, Florida State, Miami, Nebraska, USC, Michigan, Auburn.
I was going to say Indiana. I think is a good comparison, like a basketball school that has great tradition, has been a championship caliber program, and has not made any noise in 25 years.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Austin, would you consider Tennessee a blue blood in football?
Yeah, they're still blue blood.
Oh, come on, AT.
No, they are. I mean, they're still a blue blood program. I think most national people would still consider Tennessee a blue blood program. They're just, they just they're just covered in rust right now. Like, you've got to find a way to get the rust off the program. And so, as far as where would I rank them, I would rank Tennessee at the dead bottom of that list, because they have to play Alabama every year. And I know the old traditionalists say, well, I want to keep that game. I understand that. But when you factor that in, and the schedule Tennessee has to play, and those some years they have to play, LSU and Alabama, or Auburn and Alabama, or Texas A&M and Alabama, I just feel like that road to getting back is really, really hard.
I think the easiest one to cover is USC. What do you think? Just because of the Pac-12 is not great, and the talent pool around there is tremendous.
Yeah, I mean, the Pac-12 in some ways might even actually work against them a little bit, just because the reputation of that conference, probably some kids are not hanging around California as much anymore, because back in the day that a lot of kids were leaving California because USC and UCLA were down. So maybe the Pac-12 hurts them in that regard. But I mean, look, the Pac-12 should be about USC and Oregon, maybe Washington is kind of where the Pac-12 should be. USC should never be bad. The Big Ten is harder, but I don't think Michigan should ever be down, because you have a huge alumni base there. You have unbelievable fan support. You should be the best program in the state. And with Detroit and other areas in the state, I think that you ought to be able to recruit. I think Michigan's biggest issue one of their biggest issues. I think they've gotten away from recruiting their home state and that area up there. I think they get caught too much in trying to come south and trying to get guys to go up there. You can't tell me there are not more players in Detroit and some other cities in Michigan that could end up being at Michigan as opposed to them trying to go to Florida, or Georgia and recruit a bunch of players from there. I think Florida State should be an easier rebuild than Miami. I think Florida State should be an easier rebuild than Nebraska. And I think Auburn is easier than Tennessee because they've won more recently. But I think Auburn can be a tough job if you're in a major rebuild there because of what Austin's saying, the schedule they have to play every year. All right, to Carl.
I mean, I was just gonna say Tennessee has certain things that make it easier than Nebraska, Florida State, or Miami. But they also the biggest detriment they have is just the schedule. So playing in the league helps get you noticed and can help you with getting players because people want to play in the SEC. But when you face that murderer's row schedule that Tennessee's faced every year for the last 10 or 12 years, being down, it's just hard to claw your way out. I mean, look at Butch and them. They have that unbelievable 5-0 start with the big momentum win over Florida, the big Hail Mary against Georgia, and then what do they do after that? They turn around and have to go to A&M, play Alabama, then they get the week off, and then they lay the egg against South Carolina. But I mean, you had after you started 5-0, you had A&M and Alabama. I mean, Florida State's not having that.
Yeah, just remember, AP, coming out of that open day, that's when the schedule really got hard for Tennessee.
I understand. I get it. But my point is,
I know I get it.
Florida State, they don't have any.
I know,
if they make it through a murderer's row, they're done.
I'm being facetious there because that's what Butch said at the press conference was that the season got really harder after they finished playing Alabama and they had to finish with Missouri, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, South Carolina, which obviously they didn't get done. What's the deal with the investigation? It's beginning to feel like it's dragging out simply to avoid Jeremy Pruitt's buyout. Surely the administration knows that it's hurting recruiting. I don't know. I just think I'm not saying it's going to get resolved, but I think at some point in the month of August, there's going to be some kind of movement, whether they say it's over, whether they're announcing some kind of proposed self-imposed penalties or something. I think something by the time you get to kickoff, there's going to be some type of verbal discussion of moving forward with that investigation. I don't know that for any fact. That's just my guess. I think that, 9.5 months, 10 months into an investigation, at that point, surely you're through talking to everybody that you need to talk to. But we'll see. I thought they would be done talking with everybody long before that.
Have they talked to you yet?
No, they haven't talked to me. They don't need to talk to me. I got nothing for them. There's no reason for my name to surface in anything that they've been discussing. All right, here we've got.
But my point was they've talked to everybody else.
Yeah, they have talked to everybody else, but they have not talked to me, and I don't anticipate that. You're right; they have talked to everybody, and including probably some janitors that work in the building at some point. I'm going to combine these two questions here. Chances that Tennessee lands 2 of the 3, Pope, Horton, Miller, and what are the chances that those 3 will be off the board by August? Austin Price?
Oh, man, I think the chances of landing at least 2 of the 3 is Hub's 50 GIF. And the chances that is it 2 of the 3 are off the board or any of them are off the board?
Do you think the 3 are off the board by August? I don't think all 3 will be off the board by August.
No, I think 1 for sure will be off the board by August. And then the other 2, I think shortly after August begins, 1 probably comes off the board. And then a second one, I think Pope may go longer than any of them.
Yep, I would agree with that.
I think Auburn's kind of gotten in play there. They want him to come down for a visit in the fall. He may last longer than any of them.
Yep. Based on my conversation with him, I think that's certainly possible. I mean, he did not sound like a guy getting ready to make a decision when I spoke to him over the weekend. All right. I understand your sources in the program are putting a positive spin on what UT thinks the NCAA will do regarding self-imposed sanctions. based on your understanding of the violations and how the NCAA enforcement division works, are you as optimistic as Tennessee? If so, why? I don't know that Tennessee's putting this big positive spin out there. I think we've all, Rob, kind of been in the same boat. They're going to Tennessee's going to self-impose some scholarship reduction, maybe self-impose a 1-year bowl ban type deal, and hope that it goes from there. I don't know that that's not the spin from Tennessee. Tennessee's spin has been, we've worked hand in hand with the NCAA, so they should expedite this quickly and should be somewhat kind to us because they've been so cooperative. That's the notion coming out of the Tennessee camp that I get.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I do think that they're trying to be thorough, the administration, but I also think that maybe part of the reason you're running up, what is it, $500,000 legal tab north of that by now,
North of that,
and you can show the NCAA that receipt and say that this is how serious we are about getting this thing cleaned up and get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. We'll see, when it gets done, but I think that's the notion coming out of Tennessee, is that because we're so willing to help, you should be more cooperative and helpful to us in terms of expediting this.
Even if you spend $1 million on lawyers, that's a lot cheaper than 13 and change.
Yes, it is that true. All right, how good of a job recruiting is the basketball staff doing compared to other SEC coaches? Where do you put Tennessee against, say, Alabama, Kentucky, what they're doing out there?
Unless they're bumping heads with another program, I really don't keep up with it. What Arkansas is doing, or I know Alabama's doing has really stepped things up. In the past couple of years, they're getting big name guys on campus. Kentucky always is going to get big name guys on campus. But I would say I put Tennessee right there with Kentucky, and from what I know, I would put Alabama in a little bit behind them in the next tier, and then probably Arkansas, Florida, and then kind of once you get past that, just a hodgepodge. And you can LSU also probably in that second or third tier as well, but we all know the story there.
All right, AP, are we on commitment watch this week, and who are the DB targets for this class?
Yeah, we're on commitment watch this week. There's no doubt about it. Probably the next couple of days. As far as DBs, with Kamari Rogers off the board, that's got they were really hoping to get him up here that last weekend. Then he committed to Miami, and not a surprise because he'd been to Miami like 3 times in the month of June. So obviously they had a lot of the traction with him. Tennessee, is looking at a couple of DBs from the state of Georgia. I keep the kid's name mistakes me. Andre, he's committed to Kentucky. There's a couple of kids up in the Midwest that they've kind of started to look at a little bit. And then, that I think they can continue to look, in the transfer route past this year for DBs, because I think they kind of like that position for DB, somebody that's got some experience. It's what I was told, so I would look for Tennessee to, look that route, after this season's up again, to see if they can, continue to add experience at that position, just because, when you have bring in a freshman corner, those guys haven't played at this level. So it's a little bit different. Whereas if you bring in a guy that's played at the Power 5 level or college football level, it's just a little bit different.
All right, quickly here, bouncing through a few more. Do you see Neyland Stadium dropping out of the top 10 in the country for stadium capacity once renovations are complete? Also, are there plans for renovation to the outside in the near future? She needs some brick and new paint in the worst way. Yeah, when you start talking about doing the south end zone, that's not just going to be the concourses. When you do the concourses, that's also going to be the outside facade there. I don't know the top 10 numbers. I don't know how far. Rob, I don't know what the loss of capacity would have to be to get Tennessee out of the top 10 to answer that question. And they're going to reduce capacity, though. That's a given.
Well, I would also say other programs are going to reduce capacity in this new day and age that we're living in. So, I'm kind of skeptical that they'll drop out, because I think you're going to see a lot of stadiums around the country kind of go the same route Neyland is, to make it a more fan-friendly experience.
AP, where is Marcel Reed on Tennessee's quarterback board?
He's up there. Would not consider him, number one, but I also consider him not number one. They got the kid they like from the state of Michigan. Marcel Reed is obviously on Tennessee's list a good bit. And then there's Chris Parsons, another kid from Nashville that transferred from Texas that, visited here right here before the end of the dead period. So, again, he's right up there at the top. I would not label him number one, but also wouldn't label him not number one. I think those guys are all kind of right around the same. I think Tennessee's recruiting all pretty, evenly.
Yeah, I don't think Tennessee's identified a clear-cut number one at this point. I don't think there is a number one on their board. I'm with you. I think they have a collection of guys that they like, that they're recruiting, that they want to continue to recruit, continue to evaluate. But I don't know that they've set and said, okay, this is our guy. We're all in for this one guy, and that's where we're going at this point. Maybe that becomes Reed. Maybe that becomes Chris Parsons. Maybe that's somebody else, the kid from Michigan or whatever. But I don't know that there's been an identifying moment that says this is the number one guy we're going to recruit at the quarterback position.
And just for casual followers of recruiting who might be listeners, those are 2023 kids.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, he's talking about 2023 quarterbacks. They've obviously got their quarterback for 2022. That's worth noting and clarifying to make sure everybody understands, what class that you're talking about there. Tennessee basketball has had the fourth most NCAA tournament appearances to never make the Final Four. If you could summarize why that is in one sentence, what would it be? Scotty Hobson make a free throw against Michigan State. What can Tennessee do as a program to get over the hump and become a Final Four team? Rob, in a sentence, why has Tennessee never been to the Final Four?
Better players. There's no common thread. You're talking about multiple coaches over multiple decades. How many top 10 picks has Tennessee had over that time in the NBA draft?
Yeah,
zero.
Yeah,
except for Bernard and Ernie.
Yeah, So and again, I think you're right. It is just the NCAA tournament is just it's just kind of a freak. It's a freak thing. It's getting hot at the right time. That's what tournament sports are about. And
look at Mississippi State in baseball.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go. Nobody had them winning the College World Series, and here they are. That's a team that tanked and was terrible in the SEC tournament. Now maybe that was intentional. I don't believe that they went out there intentionally trying to lose, but there's a team that didn't do anything, and you kind of wondered about them. Looked like they were in trouble in their super regional at home. They find a way to come back and win there. And then you get hot at the right time. And then you have other crazy things that happen. You look at, for Tennessee, Rob, the Kyle Alexander injury. If he's playing, what does that mean for that bracket, the way that bracket opened up for Tennessee? You just never know.
Who's the little kid from Purdue, the crazy 4-point, the foul of a 3-point shot by Lamonte Turner in the Sweet 16?
Yeah, that's the NCAA tournament. A lot of it is crazy and doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense.
We're the guy mentioned Scotty Hobson missing a free throw.
Yep, that's right. Well, blowing, and what's the year where they have the huge lead against North Carolina in the second half? When Jerry was coach there, and they didn't get.
They had a huge lead against Ohio State in San Antonio, and blew that.
Yep, absolutely. All right, how do you think the name, image, likeness will affect the portal? Would a guy like Henry T be at Alabama if he had a lucrative deal in Knoxville with a company somewhere? Austin, do you think the portal will or the name, image, likeness will deter some portal things? Or is that just one of those in the category of we got to wait and see how it all plays out?
We got to see how it all plays out. I don't think you're going to know, just some of these things. I think it's going to take some time to kind of see like the impact. At least that's how I feel.
What if a kid had like a multi-year contract with a company? Could he legally leave? How would that factor into things?
Oh, and Austin, we've talked about this too, Rob. Austin and I have talked about this. What if somebody front loads something? and says,
Oh,
hey,
yeah.
we're going to give you money up front for this marketing deal. Okay. We're going to give you this up front. Then we're going to, whatever that dollar figure is, and then we're going to take that dollar figure, but you're obligated to that until that dollar figure is fulfilled to us. And that's probably not going to be a 1-year thing. That's probably going to be a multi-year thing. So if you get into those types of contract deals, yeah, that's possible. Are there going to be those kinds of contract deals? I mean, you got some people out there saying, kids are going to be making multiple millions of dollars to play college sports. I don't know if that's going to be an accurate number or not an accurate number. I don't think it's going to be in year one. We'll see what it becomes on down the road, but I don't think anybody's signing a 7-figure deal tomorrow
And
with
if
anybody.
it is, I mean, it'll be an ultra small percentage
Yeah.
of players.
And so, what does that money realistically look like is, what's the cost point, the price point for all this stuff? I mean, tomorrow is going to be the start of a wild day, or today is going to be the start of a wild day, with some things getting announced. And then we'll see over the course of the next month what else gets done, what kind of national deals, if any, are done, and who's got, some realistic local things going on. We'll see how that shakes out over the course of the next few weeks. And that's going to be a hot topic for sure. Plenty of recruiting to keep your eye on the next few days. And here at Volquest, we'll have it all covered for you. Plenty of other stuff going on, but that's going to do it for this edition of the Blue Water Climate Control Volquest.com mailbag podcast. For Rob Lewis and Austin Price, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your Thursday, everybody.